This is Charles from Mayhem, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, episode number 162. Today's guest, we're talking to Charles Ghul Hedger. He is a guitarist from the UK. He plays with Imperial Vengeance. Best know him as the guitarist for Mayhem. He also plays with Shining and Veile. Today we're going to be talking to him about what got him into metal, what made him want to play guitar, as well as doing a rundown of his discography. So, without further ado, let's talk to Ghul. So, what's up, guys? I am here with Charles Ghul Hedger from Mayhem, Shining, Imperial Vengeance, and Veile. So, how are you doing today, man? Great to be able to talk with you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Good to talk to you. I'm doing pretty good. Busy as always, but yeah, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, it's so great to have you here. So kind of like the format is, I want to talk about like your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography. But before we go into that, take you back
Sure.
to young Charles Hedger. So kind of growing up in England, what were the first bands that got you into metal and what made you want to start playing guitar?
Okay, so I suppose the first bands, oddly enough, was bands like Emperor and Enslaved. Most people go through, the lighter stuff first and progress towards the really extreme stuff. But for me, I started there mainly just because I like this I like the harmony. I like the dark, this big epic dark feeling that these bands had. So that's where I started, and I started playing around with the piano and keyboards and stuff initially, and then I was gravitating towards things like Motorhead and Metallica as well at the same time. And then eventually I just decided that I had to try to play guitar, which didn't come anywhere near as naturally to me as a keyboard did, because with a keyboard everything's kind of logical and in front of you, and you can see everything. But with a guitar, it's completely the opposite. It's definitely was a way less natural thing for me to pick up initially, but that was kind of where it all started anyway. So yeah, it was really the more extreme bands initially, and then I started to work backwards through the more sort of rock and hard rock stuff.
That's so interesting because usually I never thought about like going backwards because it's usually people start with the lighter, then go with the heavier. That's how it was kind of like with me.
Yeah, I suppose it was because I always hear music. I've always found that I hear music more in terms of the harmonic content rather than the way it's presented, if that makes any sense. So to me, it wasn't necessarily extreme in that way. It was just I liked the sound it was making, if that makes sense. So it didn't feel like a extreme. I don't categorize music into extreme or lighter or whatever. It's really about the sonic color, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. And so I suppose I didn't really think about it at the time. I just liked it.
All right. And so like tell me about like some of like your first bands that you started up when you were like young. I'm always curious about like that. I don't think nobody's ever asked that.
Well, it was sort of local bands, the standard kind of thing. There was like a venue in the town, and everyone would play in this one place. And so I was in a two or three kind of just pub level bands, just kids basically, trying to do something. That was really occupying all my time for whenever. I don't really remember exactly when I started playing guitar, but I would say 3, 4, 5 years of doing that, but there was nothing notable. We never nothing that we didn't release anything, or it was just a few shows here and there, like a gig every 6 months or whatever.
All right. And so I believe like the first thing was I want to talk about is of course your time with Cradle of Filth. I know like you did this live
Mm.
concert, Peace Through Superior Firepower. I love this
Yeah,
concert. Tell
yeah,
me about like playing this show.
yeah. Well, that was that was a weird one because I went from what I was just describing to playing back to filling in essentially on bass for Cradle, which is quite a big leap. There was no, I didn't get that experience of van tours and You know, the build up to that level. I went straight from playing pubs to a few friends to playing to like 1,000 people with nothing in between, which sounds great because you're skipping loads of steps, but in reality, I was massively unprepared on every level. You know, musically, emotionally, psychologically, and so that was a bit of a baptism of fire. And that show, it was filmed over 2 nights, as far as I remember.
Yeah,
it was filmed across two shows in Paris, and it was the end of the first tour I ever did. But that was playing bass, so you know that wasn't even my natural musical habitat anyway. So it was pretty on the edge, you know. It was looking back on it now, it's amazing really that I survived it, because I was way out of my depth, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, it's still a great concert. It said it was filmed April 2nd, 2005 at Elysée Montpellier, Paris.
Yeah, that's in Paris. I believe that venue burned down, or I'm pretty sure it's gone. I think it burned down.
Oh shit! Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah,
yeah. But then
it happens a lot, actually. Yeah. There's several.
Yeah, because I know, like, at the old Masquerade in Atlanta, like, apparently it got like torn down, or it got like replaced with like some building complex or some shit.
Okay. Which was the original? What years was that? Because I know we played the Masquerade many times.
I think the first time I actually saw Mayhem was 2015. You did that tour with Watain and Rotting Christ. That was like the first time I ever saw Mayhem.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We would have played there then for sure.
Yeah. And then talking about like Thornography, like I love like this album, believe it or not. Like nobody ever really talks about it, and nobody actually knows that you were in the band at this time. So what was the recording process like for this album?
That was quite fun, actually. That was an enjoyable time. So basically what had happened was, between, obviously, after that first tour, then there was a load of shake-ups in the band, and then the guitarist was gone suddenly, and so I moved, you know, from bass to guitar, which is really what I wanted to be doing, obviously. And then we started the process of writing and recording that album. Actually, it's interesting you say that, because when I look at over the years, the royalty on that album have been enough to make me think that it's done pretty well, which is, I have mixed feelings about it as a creative outlet, but the process of making it was great. We went to a studio out in the countryside in England. We stayed there for a few weeks, and it was that whole real old school studio experience. You know, everyone staying in the place, getting the recording done. It was a lot of fun, to be honest. It was a cool experience. It's not something that you do that often nowadays, because it's so expensive and it's unnecessary. So much can be done remotely, and you know, there's so many ways to cut costs when you're recording now without cutting quality, that it's very rare that you actually get that experience of everyone going to a studio together for that length of time. But it was a cool experience, and again, I learned a lot from it, because it's a very different thing when you're recording out of your comfort zone. You know, you're surrounded by professionals, you know, and producer and engineers and people, and that's a very exposing feeling, and it teaches you a lot about your own playing, and it exposes a lot of things that you need to work on and cracks in the foundations of your abilities and stuff. So yeah, it was a cool experience.
Awesome. And what was like the touring cycle like for this album, because being as this was like the only album with you in the band?
No, I was still in the band with the next album as well, but the touring cycle, I'm trying to remember how much we did off that. I know we did a lot of festivals. That was a big thing with the summer of 2006 and 7 and 8. There was a lot of festivals, and there was definitely a few tours in there. There's some US tours. I think that it was pretty successful on the whole. I mean, you have to remember that the band started the decline sort of right after, I suppose, around the midway through the Nymphetamine or towards the end of the Nymphetamine touring cycle, which is when I came in. And it had already just started to slip at that point. So, progressively for the years I was in the band, things worked, the venue attendance and that kind of stuff was starting to slide gradually. But that was a pretty, especially, like I said, what's sticking in my mind, I don't remember much about the tours, but the festivals I remember being really cool. We did some really big ones like Rock am Ring, Download, the real sort of monster festivals, so that was cool. It was again a lot to learn, and a lot of feelings of sort of, what am I doing here, when it's sort of 60,000-70,000 people, but yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And then, of course, you left Cradle, and I think it was around that time you just started the Electric Hellfire Club.
No, this is a myth. This happens all the time. That's not me. I don't know who that guy is, but it's not me. I don't. You're not by any stretch the first person to ask me that, and it's even on my Wikipedia at some point, or maybe it still is. I don't really.
I was looking at your page on Metal Archives.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, okay.
Which could be like another Wikipedia.
I hope he's doing well. Yeah, but no, that's nothing to do with me. So yeah. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, I swear, Metal Archives needs to get their shit together.
Yeah, but I mean, they probably took the info. This is something that's been floating around for a long time. I should check out who that band even is. I've never listened to them. Maybe they're great. Maybe I should just pretend I did start that band.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good way to just clear the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess next up is Imperial Vengeance. So how'd you form that band? Because I know you formed 2007.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it was a sort of a creative frustration, I suppose, and I just had a lot of ideas and I wanted to just do something with us. I don't know. It was a lot more about the ideas. It was just me and one other guy, and we had a good working relationship and a good creative relationship. So that was sort of, it was an entirely a creative thing without any real intention of doing much with it. We didn't really know what we were going to do with it. It was more about just doing it for the sake of doing it, almost like a hobby. But there was some cool stuff that came out of that, actually. Especially the second album. That was but we screwed up a bit with the production of it, the actual packaging and the whole look of it, and we released like a Penny Dreadful, these old Victorian style comics to go with it and everything, and it was really great. But the thing that was we screwed up on was the actual production. The songs and the music and stuff I still listen back to some of it now and think it was great. It's not something I cringe at when I listen to. The problem is that the actual production itself wasn't very good, and that's where we messed up. Might be something to revisit one day if I can find the original tracks and get it remixed and remastered. But yeah, to answer your initial question, it was just a creative thing. It was something that we just felt good to do, and we enjoyed doing it, and we enjoyed making it.
Yeah, and I like that first EP, Death August and Royal.
Yeah, Death August and Royal. Yeah, that's right. I mean that band, we did some amazing stuff with that band, actually. We on the first album we did we got Harry Patch, who was the last surviving veteran of the trenches, World War One.
Oh, wow.
Not the last surviving World War One veteran, but the last surviving guy who was actually in the trenches, and he actually did some spoken word on it. We went down to meet him. It was pretty incredible. He was 109 years old, something like that, and that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And
we got some. We got him to do that, and we. I think that if we'd have been smarter about that project, it could have actually run. We could have done something with it. But everyone can say that about everything they've ever not seen through.
Yeah, but I also like that first EP, and hard to believe that this year does mark 15 years of that EP. So how do you feel about that now, 15 years later?
yeah, I mean, I haven't probably listened to it for 15 years, to be honest. And I know that that was very rough. The production and stuff was very rough on that. But something about that, there was something quite cool about it. It had that homemade energy about it, which I liked. I must have a copy of it somewhere. I should go back and check it out again.
Yeah. And I know you know that the actual first full length, At the Going Down of the Sun, I've listened to it before trying to get preparation for this interview. I think it's a pretty good EP, not EP, album. So what was the thought process going to making the debut full length Imperial Vengeance album?
Yeah, that was just again exactly the same as why we started the whole thing. We just did it for the sake of doing it. Yeah, there was no real intention behind it. It was the purest form of art, really. It was just we were just doing it because we wanted to, and because we had these ideas, and we just wanted to put the ideas down. So that was really all it was. It was that would have been 2009, I think that came out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a while ago as well now.
Yeah, and that same year you also did an EP, Night Boat to Cairo. So how did you end up doing like an EP of that?
Yeah, the Madness cover. I don't know. I think it was kind of like a bet of whether we could actually make that track work, and then we just got obsessed with it, and we spent ages on that on making that track, and then we did the video and everything for it, and that was a bit. I think it confused a lot of people because it's sort of Madness are one of those bands who are seen as a kind of gimmick band, a bit of a joke band, but actually if you listen to the music and you pay attention, they're phenomenally competent musicians, and there's a sort of Britishness about it. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, it's a bit jokey, it's a bit sort of pub, everyone around the piano having a drink kind of music. And of course, the whole point of the Ivy project was it was supposed to encapsulate a little bit of Britishness to it, so it sort of made sense in our heads, but it did confuse some people. It's a sort of joke, which I suppose it was in a way, but it was also, we meant it. It was like we were doing it to. It was supposed to sound good, put it that way. It wasn't entirely a joke,
Yeah.
It was more like a challenge to see if we could do it, I guess, and then we just got obsessed with it and spent ages doing it.
Okay, and then their last album you put on 2011, Black Heart of Empire. I like that. I thought it was a good follow up to At the Going Down of the Sun, because usually with the debut album you were saying.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say I prefer that album actually. Musically, it's way more interesting. There's so much going on. Some of the songs on there are so complex compositionally and musically, and also I like. There's something. It just felt like a natural progression somehow to do something very. The whole point of that album is it's really about sort of old London, Victorian London, and the dark side of the seedy underbelly of old London. And yeah, I really there's one of my only creative regrets I think in my life is that we mishandled how to present that material, because I think it could have been something really great. It had a lot of good reviews and so on, but yeah, it just wasn't what we could have done, put it that way, by a long shot.
Yeah, but I also like the last song on there, The Black Idol, which is pretty much almost 11 minutes long. I consider it kind of like you guys is like Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So tell me about like that song.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I really like that track as well. It's of course it's based on a painting, and it's a little bit based on it's based on a little bit on the Black Idol, and it's also a bit sort of around the Isle of the Dead. But 11 minutes is a lot for some people, and so it just depends if you can let it take you and sort of get swept up on it. I think I like that track. I'm proud of it.
Yeah, and being as it has been 12 years since we have any new Imperial Vengeance album, is there like any plans to make a new one, or is it just nah?
No, not really. I mean, again, it's one of these things. It just bugs me. Just sometimes I lie awake, when you're trying to sleep and stuff is bugging the back of your brain. This is one of the things that gets me, is that I really feel that project we really could have done something with that if we just handled the whole thing better. But it was very I don't know. We just made a lot of mistakes along the way, and a lot of we just mishandled a lot of things, and it's a shame. But in many ways, Veile, this project that I have at the moment, is kind of like the spiritual successor of that band in many ways, because it has a lot of the same ethos to it, but it's also, of course, it's very different. But it would, I don't think it would work to run. I think that the Imperial stuff is kind of, it was of the moment, and I don't know how I wouldn't know what to do with it creatively now, I think.
Yeah. And then, 2012, you joined the almighty Mayhem. So how'd you end up joining the band?
Well, it actually been talked about for a long time. I've been in contact with Attila for probably, what would it have been, about 5 years at that point. Potentially, we've been basically whenever Runa, Blasphemer, whenever he left the band, that was when I started talking to Attila about potentially coming over and trying, seeing how it would work. And I remember I did some demos for them and stuff. And we'd been talking a while, but then it came. There were two issues, one from either side. I had a few tours lined up, and it was that whole thing of, a bird in the hand. Do I jump ship from something that's guaranteed touring for the next year or whatever to go to something that maybe doesn't even work out? Because I was still with Cradle at this point, of course. And there also, from their point of view, there was a bit of a hesitancy, I think, because I was with Cradle, and it was a bit kind of like, didn't feel very right for Mayhem. You know what I mean? Those bands are quite kind of polarized in a lot of ways. Also, the fan bases are as well, although there is, of course, crossover. But I think that there was a bit general feeling in the Mayhem camp that it would be a bit weird to have someone from that band. So, but we'd stayed in contact, and then I think it was Christmas, must have been Christmas 2011. I got a message from Attila again. I hadn't heard from him from a while, just saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Not really saying much, and I figured, okay, something's coming. There's another mail following up to this. So I replied and we had a bit of a chat, and he said, "Hey, do you want to come over in a month or so and rehearse with us?" And that was pretty much it. Then that's where it all took off from. So I went to Oslo, rehearsed with them a few times, and then we started playing together in, I think it was June that year.
Yeah. And did you feel like nervous, like joining the band? Did you like listen to like De Mysterious, Dom Satanas, and all the other albums to figure out this is how I have to play, or were you allowed to like bring like your own kind of like style to Mayhem?
I think, initially, the way I saw it initially was my job was just to be there and play what I was supposed to play, put it that way. And so my only concern really was just to try and do as good of the job as possible and to make the band sound as good as possible while I was playing within it. And of course, as time's gone on, I've, my own personality, musical personality and so on, has started to become more able to be a little bit freer with it. And I've started to understand a bit about where I can and can't go musically. So, but initially it was nerve-wracking because it was people I didn't really know, and it was like for any musician entering into a new place, you're the outsider for a long time. Not because they make you an outsider, but just because you naturally are. These people have worked together for a long time. They've toured together. When you live in each other's pockets, like on tour, you gain a familiarity which is impossible to synthesize. You just have to do the time. So, of course, in the early days, it was very much that feeling of being on a permanent audition, let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah, but over a couple of years that passed, and now it's strange to think actually how long it's been.
Yeah,
11 years.
Yeah. And then tell me about like making your first album with the band, Esoteric Warfare, one of my favorite albums from 2014. And hard to believe this is almost a decade.
Well, that
old.
That was a strange process, actually, and it caused. Well, I don't want to get into it too much because there's a lot of stuff, behind the scenes. But let's just say there were some divisions that went on. within that process, which we all, I think we learned from a lot, because then when we came to do the Demon album, it was approached completely differently and a lot more healthily, I think. And so, yeah, it was weird. It was like a stepping stone, I suppose, that album, into making the band function properly together, both creatively and personally, let's say.
Yeah, but I actually love Demon. This is pretty much one of my favorite albums from 2019. Like I remember hearing
Right.
Falsified and Hated. Like tell me about like the recording for this. Did you feel like comfortable now in the band as opposed to Esoteric?
Yeah. It was again, we actually did have some of that time where we all went to the studio together, and that was really good. It was a really good time, and we sort of knew somehow. I think everybody had the feeling that we were doing something that we were going to enjoy, and that was going to be well received. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. It wasn't like we were sitting around thinking like, this is great, we were amazing. It was more just, we just had the gut feeling that people were going to respond well to it, which is exactly what happened. But the process itself was great, actually. It was still challenging, because it always will be with that band, because we're challenging people. You know, you've got 5 people who are quite challenging just as individuals, trying to function together, and often just pulling in different directions. But that's sort of why, that's kind of how it works. Somehow very chaotic, but somehow it's at the end it comes together, and it's exactly how it is on stage as well. And that process was it was fun, actually. I look back on that quite fondly, to be honest.
Totally. Like, it's still one of my favorite albums from you guys in the modern era of Mayhem.
Cool. I mean, that tends to be the response that we get, which is great, because that was sort of what we wanted. It wasn't like we were trying to recapture old glories or something like that. It was more like we wanted to re-examine the initial atmosphere, or not really even the initial atmosphere, but sort of re-examining the Mysteries atmosphere, but from a different angle, to try to capture some of the soul of that album, right? Not try to just do another album like that, but just try to capture something of the feeling of that album and the soul of that album. That was always the goal with it. And I think for us, that we feel like we did. So,
all right, and I know the last Mayhem thing you did was 2021. You did the Atavistic Black Order Commando EP, which had some like B-sides from Damon. So, what was the whole reason to put out like?
That was all stuff we. Yeah, that was all recorded at the same time. So that was overspill stuff from the Demon sessions. Because what happened was, Hellhammer came in, and we had a certain amount of time allotted to record the album drums, but he did it all quite fast. So we were sort of thinking, well, we've got time, so we might as well just do. So we just did a bunch of covers and some extra stuff, and yeah, I'm glad we did in the end, because that was also a cool thing to release. It was it's something that I would actually like to do live. It'd be cool to do some of those covers live. The problem is, we already have trouble trying to fit everything into our set as it is, so it's difficult to find the time within the set to add stuff like that. But it would be interesting.
Yeah, and being as it has been a few years since Damon, have you started ideas for the next Mayhem album? So what's the status with that?
We are I mean, unofficially we are already starting to look at that. Let's say, I don't want to say too much, but let's just say we have it in our sights, the next process. Of course, next year is a huge year for the band, because it's a 40-year anniversary.
Yeah,
which is mad when we think about it. So next year is going to be a very big year for us, and so let's say we're aiming to have something to coincide with that whole event as well. That's the goal, but I can't say too much, because at the moment it's in the inception period.
Yeah.
Let's say.
I know during also 2021 you started a new band, Veile, with Annabelle, formerly of Cradle of Filth.
Yeah,
So how did you end up forming that
yeah.
band?
Well, that was actually we started that around 2017, I think. It was just I had a again, it was just I had a bunch of ideas, and I wanted to just do something with them. It's stuff that would never fit with Mayhem or anything else. It was just I just thought it'd be interesting to do something. I think it's really important for musicians to have side projects. I think it's vital actually because it breathes life in both directions. When you have side projects, it often gives you a lot more energy for your main thing because you sort of get this external venting, of ideas that won't work. You get to explore different musical aspects that wouldn't work in the context of your, like for example with Mayhem, and vice versa. Sometimes you'll be because you get that external expression, you also then it revitalizes you for the main thing. So that was kind of what it was about, and we were looking for a vocalist, and we didn't really know where we were going with that. And then when Annabelle sent her audition stuff, I was like, well, that's it. That's it. There's no question. There was never a question in my mind. It was spot on because it was bizarre. It had this kind of core. I could tell that she was classically trained. She had this choral ability, but it was mixed with this incredible vocal ability that would just go all over the place. And I thought, well, that's it. That's where I want to go because this is what will sell. This is what will make the project something completely unique. So, yeah.
Yeah. I still think it's a great EP. The Ghost Sonata. It's like only 3 songs, but it's just to the point. It's just really fucking awesome.
Yeah. We're really slow with it because obviously everyone involved is busy with other things, but we are slow. We've got another track recorded that's going to be some point within the next couple of months. So there is more coming, and we're already focusing on some more. So hopefully things are going to speed up a little bit with that. Now we've got a few visions of things that we're going to do within the next year. The main goal with that would really be to take it to become a live act. That's what I would love to see it become a functioning band, and it would definitely work. We just have to do it, and that's the tricky thing. It's just actually getting around to doing stuff.
Yeah, and then of course the last thing I want to talk about is shining. Like you're in so many like bands, so what's like the thought process going with every band? Do you have to like put yourself in like a certain mind frame depending on the projects?
I don't know. I just have a real problem saying no to anything, I guess. But no, I mean, the Shining stuff came around because basically they were in a bad situation. They needed someone to come in, step in, because Peter was going to be out. He wasn't available for quite a while, about a year or something, and so Nicholas asked me if it was something that I'd potentially be interested in helping out with, and so of course he's a friend of mine. So initially I was like, well, if I can help, I will help. And then I started to really listen to the parts and listen to Peter's playing. I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? Because he's so good. He's such a great guitar player. And so that was pretty terrifying initially, having to fill his shoes. And then we did we didn't do that many shows. So I can't remember how many, maybe about 7 or something. Awesome. And then we finished with the Eindhoven Metal meeting in whatever year that was, 2018, I want to say. 2019. Yeah, it was 2019. And I think. And then after that, obviously there was all the lockdowns and stuff. And then Peter was back, and then Nicholas decided that he wanted to sort of revamp everything for a new album, and he just asked me if I wanted to do it. And
which will be the self-titled coming up.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, so that's coming soon, I believe.
September.
It's September 15th, I think.
Yeah, on Napalm Records.
On that, but yeah. So that's kind of how that all came about. It was started off just kind of helping out, and then it just formed into something a bit more concrete. And it's cool to do.
Dude, yeah, yeah, and I'm looking forward to that.
It's a band that doesn't play that many shows, so it doesn't interfere. There's no risk of it clashing really with the busy Mayhem schedule, because the Mayhem schedule has been insane the last year. This summer is not so bad, but in general it's been crazy, and of course next year is going to likely be pretty non-stop as well.
Yeah.
So it's good because Shining, plays the odd show here and there, which is cool because it makes each show an event, and a special thing. And at the same time, it makes it easier to plan around.
Awesome. So, before we go, just want to thank you for taking your time, Charles, to do this interview. It's great to be able to talk with you today.
Of
There's
course.
just anything else with the Mayhem that you like to plug? I'm looking forward to seeing you on the Cannibal Corpse tour in October. It's just anything else you'd like to plug?
That's the thing I want to plug is that Cannibal Corpse tour. It's going to be, when is it? End of September, and I should know these dates, but September into October, US tour. That is going to be, I think, one of the most interesting, if not the top tour that I've ever been a part of. I think it's going to be really special. The venues are nice, the attendance, the ticket sales are already looking pretty. I mean, it's only been on sale for a couple of weeks, I think, and it's selling very, very fast. So I think we're going to be looking at pretty much hopefully a sold out tour, but at the very least a very, very, very well sold tour in decent sized venues.
Yeah.
So I think from the fans' point of view, to get to see those, Mayhem and Cannibal together, it's like the legends of two sides of extreme metal. I mean, I'd love to be a fan, to be honest, and just come to watch it. So that's going to be. I'm really excited for that. Actually, I don't want to be too excited for it because things can go wrong, but it's hard not to be. Actually, it's hard not to be really energized for that. It's going to be probably the most interesting tour so far in my career, I suspect.
Awesome. So everybody, Charles Ghul Hedger from Mayhem. We'll see you next time.